from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Grain markets just hold after the latest USDA reports.
Nothing that's really going to move the market.
But market attention is focusing on weather. We'll hear from a leading state climatologist in the Corn Belt.
I'm Betsy Gibbon. The pork industry is pushing for a foot and mouth disease vaccine because an outbreak could be damaging to production and trade. We'll have that story ahead in the show.
In agribusiness, prepping for the week ahead. And Machinery Pete looks at prices for collector tractors.
AgDay, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Fresh supply demand numbers roll out from USDA, but weather, planting problems, and growing conditions continue to hold the attention of the market. The biggest revisions from USDA coming in wheat numbers, the agency projecting higher stocks, production, and imports. Production climbing nearly 4 million bushels to 1.8 billion bushels on higher hard red and soft red wheat production. Ending stocks coming in at 924 million bushels. That has carryout some 20% lower than last year. USDA also raising global wheat supplies on better yields in Russia. Now, in winter wheat production, USDA says the crop will reach 1.2 billion bushels. That's about 1% higher than USDA's May estimate, but 25% lower than a year ago. Acreage is 25.5 million acres, 5 million fewer than last year. National average yield coming in at just shy of 49 bushels to the acre, a tenth higher than last month. And state by state, Kansas wheat yields climbing 2 bushels an acre from May. Oklahoma and Texas are unchanged. Corn and soybean numbers were pretty much unchanged in this report, but South American crops are as big as markets expected.
USDA's June supply and demand report offered very few highlights on the domestic side of things. Soybean carryover, both old and new crop estimates were raised there by 15 million bushels. But otherwise on corn, no changes to the old or new crop balance sheets. On wheat, the only change was to the production estimate, which was unexpectedly increased a little bit for winter wheat, and then some minor other changes, but very little change overall when we look at the grand scheme of things. Now, globally, that was a little bit of a different story. We did see some changes up and down on global carryover numbers for corn, soybeans, and wheat, but really, when you take that all into account, nothing that's really going to move the market.
Much of the market reaction was rather muted as traders continue to eye current weather conditions and new crop growing challenges.
As we look at the weather, we already have some difficulties with very dry conditions in the northern Great Plains and concern about that area moving into droughty conditions. The second area of the country where there are some crop production concerns at this point is obviously the eastern Corn Belt, very late in terms of getting the crop planted due to a lot of moisture in the month of May, and a crop that is not off to a very strong start.
In addition to weekly crop conditions, the market will also now focus on the June 30th acreage report to see if weather challenges during spring planting will alter their acreage estimates for corn and soybeans. The pork industry is pursuing one common goal in the 2018 Farm Bill. It wants money set aside to create, store, and supply a foot and mouth disease vaccine. An outbreak wouldn't just affect production or trade, but could become a food security issue. During World Pork Expo, Betsy Gibbon spoke with pork leaders about why FMD could cripple the industry and why a vaccine is now more important than ever.
The pork industry continues working to grow the world's appetite for U.S. pork.
To continue this 2, 3, 4% annual increase in production, it's not going to go to the U.S. market. Future growth has got to come from the export side.
With potential trade deals up in the air, the U.S. pork industry cannot afford an interruption in trade. That's why the industry is pushing for a foot and mouth disease vaccine. FMD is a disease that impacts cloven-hooved animals such as hogs, cattle, sheep, and deer. The industry is urging for a vaccine because an outbreak could shut down trade, unlike some other animal illnesses.
We are woefully underprepared in the event of a foot and mouth disease outbreak in this country. If you look, we export about 26% of all production of pork in the United States. In the event of an FMD outbreak, those export markets would shut down immediately.
That's why livestock organizations are asking for mandatory funding of $150 million a year in the next Farm Bill, which would provide at least 10 to 20 million doses of the most common FMD strains. It sounds like a lofty number, but the industry says an outbreak could cost much more.
2 different agencies have done the arithmetic on this. They estimate that it would be a $200 billion cost. In other words, agriculture would be devastated.
U.S. researchers have developed a handful of antigens to combat the virus, but no vaccine has been approved for the U.S.
23 different strains of foot-and-mouth disease virus that are of importance, and they don't cross-protect.
Manufacturing is one setback. U.S. law says a lab which holds the virus cannot be inland in the U.S. APHIS currently manages a vaccine bank which holds a very small amount of the vaccine offshore on Plum Island, New York. Even if there's money set aside in the new Farm Bill, making the vaccine could take some time.
Most of the manufacturing capacity for foot-and-mouth disease vaccine is currently being used to help other countries that are currently vaccinating. So it's going to take some years to build it up.
However, some countries already have vaccines in place. Merck Animal Health can develop the vaccine.
With foot-and-mouth disease, the technology for making a traditional vaccine exists. Now, from my company's standpoint, we make vaccines. That's our primary business.
Making sure diseases don't get in the way.
In one word, it would be devastating.
To ensure production and trade expansion continues. Reporting in Des Moines, Iowa at World Pork Expo, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Wagstrom says foot-and-mouth disease was last seen in the U.S. back in 1929. Now, back then, the United States had smaller farms that were not moving animals long distances. Well, today, there's an estimated 1 million pigs a day on wheels somewhere in the country. Thacker also says there's still no commercial vaccine for African swine fever, which could be a major threat to the industry. Farm markets saw excitement last week, driven by recent forecasts for rain and expanding dryness in the upper Midwest. Places like North and South Dakota, even Montana, seeing drought conditions expand last week. Well, this week, heat's forecast for the middle of the country, but is it bad enough yet to hurt crops overall?
At the moment, it looks like we're headed for a fairly normal summer. It's hard to say that when we had a winter that was so warm, but it does look like fairly normal. Of course, usually June is our wettest month. Maybe it won't be this time, but we do anticipate that still will come out with about an average crop yield, at least as things look at the moment.
Taylor expects at or above trendline yields of 170 bushels to the acre for corn at this time. Also, he's not forecasting many days above 92 degrees throughout the Corn Belt for this summer, which would be good for yields. Now, Cindy Clausen is in once again for Mike Hoffman this morning, and she looks at today's crop comments. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Clinton. Alex Anderson in Stephen, Minnesota, sending us this photo. He says the crop is off to a great start in the northern Red River Valley. Alex says there is plenty of subsoil moisture from last fall, so below average precip hasn't been a huge problem in his area. USDA is releasing another crop progress report later this afternoon. And Matt Carter from Sulphur Rock, Arkansas, says that grass is growing well. He says producers are diving into the hayfields this week. And we'll take a look at that forecast for the week ahead in just a few minutes, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Visit FarmJournalPro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. FarmJournalPro.com.
We'll recap last week's reports and give a preview of the trading week up ahead. That's next in analysis. Plus,
stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about the changing tractor collector market.
And how do you get children to exercise more? The 4-H has an action plan that may help. Find out what it is later on Ag Day.
Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
Agribusiness markets yawned a bit following Friday's reports from USDA. Let's get the close from the floor of the CME in Chicago.
Today we had a big USDA report. Well, let's take it from the top. Soybeans was mixed. The bearish USDA report really had no effect on the markets. It's been very interesting. As soon as the report came out, the market actually rallied into the report in soybeans. As soon as the report came out, it broke probably almost 10 cents. So it went from a 4-cent rally to almost a 5-cent break. But the market came back again as we speak right now, was up even a couple of cents. So it really, that tells me that the expectation is that there's going to be still better things on the horizon. Today, cattle was mixed, really trading on both sides of the market. It's holding the market very steady. Light volume in the cash market has everyone has packers worried that they're going to have to pay more for their cattle, and that bodes well actually for the market. You know, feeders are consolidating, and they're consolidating at the top of the market. There is uncertainty with the outlook going forward, and that's really pushing these markets sideways today. That's all from the floor at the CME Group. I'm Virginia McGathey.
Pete Meyer, Jared Creed, our guests here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Gentlemen, as we start the week, what do we need to be watching? Pete, we'll start with you.
Seasonality starts to kick in this time of year, and you cannot disregard that. I mean, we saw what happened last year. Last year, coming into this, or next week last year, was the week that we topped out. And seasonally, we do have a tendency to fade from here. So, yeah, I think you have to really pay attention.
Paying attention to markets. Jared, what do you think?
Just bolt on to what Pete is talking about. We're at a 6-month high for new crop corn. Hopefully over the weekend we reviewed some plans. Weather forecasts can shift on a dime. What we've gained in the last couple of weeks could quickly disappear. Weather and seasonality is going to be front runner for the next couple of weeks.
So we had the WASDE report last Friday. That doesn't really change your opinion about what's happening in these markets. You guys are both watching this weather issue that we're fighting through right now.
Look, the next big data point for me is going to be the acreage at the end of June.
Okay.
Between now and then, we're just going to be watching the weather.
Okay.
That's all we're going to be watching.
Jared, what are you seeing out in fields?
Out in fields, you know, mostly in the Iowa and Nebraska area, there's not a whole lot to complain about.
Okay.
You get into eastern Iowa, into the western Illinois, it's a little bit more variable. Verdict is definitely still out on that. Pete's going to cover more of that area here in the next couple of days as well. So
Ohio and Indiana are in really tough shape. There are some parts of central Illinois that are still hurting a little bit. I think you've taken, for some producers, unfortunately, about 20% of the top end off in Indiana and some parts of Ohio.
Does our acreage mix shift at all?
Oh, I think it does. I think it does. I was in the 91.5, 88.5 camp for a long period of time now. Now I think corn acreage is probably, you know, just below 90, where their number was. I didn't trust the last number due to the fact that 4 out of every 10 producers threw the survey in the garbage. So I think we're probably still around that area. I think beans are probably going to be around there as well.
Final word for the week ahead?
I want to pray for our friends in North Dakota, South Dakota. Let's get some moisture up there finally.
Get some rain. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate you for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day. Just a minute.
For more information on PIRA's agricultural research and analysis, call 646-478-6465. Rebuilding a future is going to take time and money. Find out how you can help at wildfirerelieffund.org.
Welcome back to Ag Day on this Monday morning. Cindy Clausen in, taking a look at weather for us. Cindy, I think everybody's really watching where we've got these dry pockets, and will it continue to expand?
Yeah, and it's definitely a possibility that we continue to see some kind of drier weather, but we're also looking at some fairly warm temperatures, and that does not help us either. Let's take a look at our jet stream. And as we head through the week, notice we'll continue with some warmer temperatures in the eastern part of the country. We do have a trough that's going to be affecting parts of the northwest, so perhaps some stormy conditions there and slightly cooler air. As we put this into motion, notice that trough's going to move across some of the northern tier of states, so we might have a little bit of rain, especially right along the U.S. Canadian border, while we're still going to keep those temperatures really warm at least through the middle part of the week in the eastern part of the country. Now eventually what we expect to see is as we get into next weekend, we are going to be seeing a trough developing here over parts of the northern plains, and that'll bring at least some cooler air for a little bit and potentially some stormy conditions, especially on the east side of that trough. Now overall for the week, we are looking at above normal temperatures in a lot of the eastern part of the country, and that stretches all the way back into the southern and central plains. Slightly cooler than normal as you get into the northwest, but also above normal in the southwestern United States. Precipitation-wise, we're looking at some above normal precipitation from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Gulf Coast. We are looking at some drier conditions in parts of the central and northern plains all the way back into the southwestern United States, perhaps a little bit on the wet side in the Pacific Northwest. Now, as we take a look a little bit further into the future, we are expecting to see above normal temperatures in the northern plains all the way for most of the western United States, also in the far northeastern United States, but we're looking at some cooler temperatures for folks in mainly the Gulf Coast states, kind of in the southeastern United States here. As far as precipitation is concerned over the next 30 days, this isn't looking good for folks in the Dakotas, where we have some very dry conditions right now. Above normal for the southeast, we still have some dryness there, so that could be a good thing as long as it's not too much there. And we're looking at some fairly dry conditions right along the west coast and the extreme far southwestern parts of the country. So I know a lot of producers are really concerned about what's going to be happening in the next 30 days. Some producers have already had to plant twice already, so that's a good look at what we expect over the next 30 days across the country. All right, that's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Muddy Montana, partly cloudy with some showers and thunderstorms possible today and a high of 80 degrees. Muddy Illinois, sunny and hot with a high of 90 degrees. And Muddy Creek, North Carolina, a high of 92 with sunshine.
Machinery Pete checks in next with a look at the latest trends in collector tractors. Plus, exercise important to healthy living, but plenty of kids are missing out. See how 4-H is trying to make exercise more enjoyable as we head in the country. Some tractors are for work, others are for show. Today, Machinery Pete tells us the latest trend in collector tractors.
Well, the collector tractor market has been changing, folks. I think we kind of all know this. Now, when we say antique tractors, you know, to me that means 1950s, 40s, 30s. And what I've been seeing on the values on these tractors basically been flat, definitely not really going up. But what I have seen is the number of auctions featuring those tractors. That has been going up, more available. Now, where I am seeing buying heat in this changing collector market is on the larger, rare tractors. Perfect example, last Saturday, collector auction in eastern Iowa, this 1964 John Deere 8020 four-wheel drive. It was a restored, beautiful tractor. So for $160,000, new record high auction price by a mile. Previous high was $90,000. All the way back in October of 2010 on a sale up in Saskatchewan. And I remember thinking at the time, geez, 90,000 bucks. We'll probably never see a higher one. And Deere only made about 100 of those 8020s. Now, another example of this trend came last September on an auction in Pennsylvania where this International 7488, just over 4,000 hours on it, International only made 16 of these. It sold for $105,000. Again, new record auction price by a mile. Previous high was $71,000 on an auction in North Dakota a few years earlier. So again, these older tractors that are larger and rare in production models, collectors really going after these things.
Shifting from old iron to cutting-edge technology, be sure to mark your calendar for Farm Journal AgTech Expo, December 11th through the 13th in Indianapolis. Farm Journal just announcing the keynote speaker, Ed Parsons, the geospatial technologist of Google. Now, if you've ever used Google Earth or Google Maps, then you're familiar with Google's key leader in those arenas. Parsons will talk about the future of satellite technology, which plays a major role in farming. Childhood obesity is a major health concern in this country. Up next, we'll show you how 4-H club's taking charge to turn that trend around.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
In an effort to fight childhood obesity, 4-H leaders in one Louisiana parish are putting together a healthy living program that puts a lot of attention on exercise, fun exercise. Louisiana has one of the highest rates of childhood obesity in the country. Getting young people active early in life can be instrumental in developing healthful habits. Making exercise fun is one aspect, but they also involve competition, giving children incentive to try harder.
I think they learned that they really need to get outside and be more active, because a lot of them were saying like they don't do this on a regular basis, and I had to make sure they knew how important it was, because kids don't know how to do that anymore.
The participants range from pre-K to 8th grade and also have different skill levels. Designing a program to fit such varied ages proved challenging, but looks like they made pretty good progress. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your week with us. For Betsy Gibbon and Cindy Clausen, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great week in Farm Country.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.